The government. What is it? Why is it? Who is it? You may ask yourself such questions like this when pondering society. I remember some of my early philosophical introductions into government and the structure of society through a class on the ancient Greek society, wherein they asked questions like, what is justice? What is righteousness? What is the law? So for thousands and thousands of years, people have debated this. How do we organize ourselves? And then it occurred to me, people are going to be unhappy. There's going to be the rich versus the poor, the blue people versus the green people, humanity versus inhumanity. There's always cause for clamor. So with all of the chaos of just simply trying to be, how do we figure out what's right and what's wrong? How do we balance our individual rights versus the good of society? Many a scholar have propounded such ideas and questions and attempted to answer same, one of which is Henry David Thoreau. He was back kicking around in the 1800s and he attempted to answer these questions in his work such as Walden and Civil Disobedience. Now, he was an American philosopher, poet, and environmental science. Although his work was published over 160 years ago, many of the themes and concepts he considered still apply to us today. So it's worth reading and why we still discuss it. So what is civil disobedience? In short, it is pro-individual versus the mass consciousness of society. More of a hands-off me government approach towards life. It's a relatively quick read. My copy is just around 24 pages and he gets right into it by opening with, I heartily accept the motto, the government is best which governs least, and that I should like to see it acted up in more rapidly and systematically. Right off the bat, he calls out the overreaching of government and also those who sit back and watch it happen. One group cannot grasp power as this is an inherent danger to all others in society. On thinking for yourself. Now, when Thoreau was around and writing, he was in the midst of the transcendentalist period or movement. Now, self-reliance was definitely trending during this time frame, and upon which he writes, why has every man a conscience then? I think we should be men first and subjects afterward. The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right. It is truly enough said that a corporation has no conscience. If this isn't a follow your heart, follow your instinct moment, I don't know what is. What may be trending for the masses might not be good for the individual. We've seen it time and time again. On voting, voting has its controversies, unfortunately. And for thousands of years, we have been asking questions like who should be able to vote, when should we vote, what should we vote on, is it fair, does it even matter if I vote? Now to this Thoreau writes, all voting is a sort of gaming, like checkers or backgammon, with a slight moral tinge to it. Playing with right and wrong with moral questions, and betting naturally accompanies it. So in other words, we don't really know, just like they didn't know over a century ago, how the process of voting would turn out. Even if we may be dejected and we don't think that our favorite will win, it is still our job to show up and cast the vote. Many parallels in today's society, right? This is still applicable today. So even today, we cast our ballots with the best intentions in mind, with enthusiasm and even fervor sometimes. But for some people, they vote in spite of candidates rather in favor of candidates. And this is played out throughout the century. We never really know what the person we are voting for is going to do until they get into the seat and start to drive. Voting is indeed as important today as it was so many years ago. On self-conduct. Now, the moment we lose our cool in a debate or in an argument is the moment we have lost. So conduct ourselves with logic and reason is the way to go. But the government knows that the moment we become emotional is the moment we stop paying attention to some of the things that really matter. So during the 1800s even, Thoreau writes, thus, the state never intentionally confronts a man's sense, intellectual or moral, but with his body, his senses. So in order to keep a clear mind, you have to stay calm. But that is so difficult when we're constantly being confronted with a partisan and emotionally filled rhetoric, essentially. It's a tactic that's been used throughout time. So how do you do civil disobedience? Well, if civil obedience means giving up your free will, free speech, and handing your emotions over to the government, then civil disobedience is the opposite. Thoreau writes, I was not born to be forced. I will breathe after my own fashion. Let us see who is the strongest. I am not responsible for the successful working of the machinery of society. Let it go, let it go. So in other words, you cannot imprison a free mind and fill it full of nonsense. Now, what does this mean for us in today's society? Well, at the bare minimum, it means we need to pay attention. If we want to maintain our sense of self and our personal sense of right and wrong, freedom and morality, we must be paying attention to those who would feel free to give up those rights. So make sure you stay a part of your own decision making, and go ahead and get a copy of this book, Civil Disobedience. And until next time, be happy and confident speakers and writers.